Have you ever thought about what life might be like in a nursing home? Or maybe you're wondering if it's the right choice for you or someone you love? It's a big decision, isn't it? One that comes with a lot of questions and emotions. I've spent years working with seniors across the United States and Canada, helping them navigate this very choice. And I've seen firsthand how it can change lives for better or for worse. Moving into a nursing home often seems like a practical step, a way to make sure you're safe and cared for as you age. But here's what I've learned. There are some hard truths about nursing homes that many people don't talk about, and knowing them can make all the difference in how you stay independent and happy. In this video, we're going to walk through 6 important lessons I've gathered from folks who've lived in nursing homes so you can be better prepared and make the best choice for yourself or your loved ones. These lessons aren't always easy to hear, but they're real, and they can help you avoid some common mistakes that seniors face. Let's start with the first lesson: the loss of personal freedom. When you move into a nursing home, you might think you're gaining security, but for many, it comes at the cost of the freedom you've always cherished. I remember meeting a gentleman named Robert at a community event in Texas a few years back. Robert had moved into a nursing home because his family thought it would be safer for him after a fall. He was in his early 80s, and he'd always been a free spirit, someone who loved taking long walks whenever he felt like it, or staying up late to watch his favorite old movies. But once he moved in, he told me he felt like he'd lost a part of himself. The nursing home had strict rules: meals at set times, lights out by a certain hour, and even limits on when he could go outside. He said it felt like he was living in someone else's house, always following someone else's schedule. It wasn't just the rules that got to him. It was the little things like not being able to choose what he wanted for breakfast or decide when to take a walk in the garden. That loss of control can weigh heavily on your spirit, especially if you're used to doing things your own way. I've heard this story from so many folks over the years, and it's a hard truth. Nursing homes often have rigid schedules and policies that can make you feel more like a guest than a resident. For someone who values their independence, that can be a tough adjustment, and it's something you need to think about carefully before making the move. That feeling of losing your freedom can often lead to another challenge that hits even harder: loneliness. It's something I've seen so many seniors struggle with in nursing homes, and it's a truth that doesn't get talked about enough. You might think a nursing home will be full of people so you'll never feel alone, but the reality can be very different. I once sat down with a woman named Clara at a senior center in Minnesota, and her story really opened my eyes. Clara had moved into a nursing home after her husband passed away, hoping it would give her a sense of community. She was in her late 70s, and she'd always been a social butterfly, someone who loved chatting with neighbors, hosting family dinners, or just catching up with friends over coffee. But once she moved in, she told me she felt more isolated than ever. The other residents often kept to themselves, and the staff were so busy that they didn't have time to sit and talk. Clara said she'd go days without a real conversation, and she missed her old life so much. Her morning walks with friends, the laughter at family gatherings, even the simple chats with her mail carrier. She felt like she was surrounded by people, but still so alone. And that loneliness started to weigh on her heart. I've heard this from so many others, too. Nursing homes can sometimes feel like a place where connections are hard to come by. You might not get to see your family as often as you'd like, especially if they live far away or have busy lives of their own. And even if there are activities or events, they might not be the kind of social interactions you crave. For someone who thrives on relationships, that lack of connection can make a nursing home feel more like a lonely island than a community. It's a hard truth to face, but it's something you need to think about if you're considering this move. How will you stay connected to the people and the life you love? Let's keep exploring those important lessons about life in a nursing home so you can make the best choices for yourself or someone you care about. We've already talked about how losing your personal freedom and feeling lonely can be harder than you might expect. And now it's time to look at another truth that can really catch you off guard. The quality of care in nursing homes isn't always what you hope it will be. You might think that moving into a nursing home means you'll be well taken care of, with staff who are always there to help you with a smile. That's the picture we often have in our minds, isn't it? But the reality can be very different, and it's something I've seen over and over in my years of working with seniors. I'll never forget a man named George, who I met at a senior support group in California a few years ago. George had moved into a nursing home because he needed help with daily tasks after a stroke left him with limited mobility. He was in his late 70s, and he'd always been a cheerful person, someone who loved chatting with anyone he met. But when I talked to him, he looked so disappointed. He told me the staff at his nursing home were often too busy to give him the attention he needed. Some days he'd wait hours for help with simple things, like getting dressed or taking a shower, and the staff seemed rushed, like they didn't have time to really listen to him. He even said the food was often cold by the time it got to him, and the activities they promised, like bingo or music nights, hardly ever happened. It broke my heart to hear how let down he felt because he'd expected so much more. I've heard stories like George's from so many others over the years, and it's a tough truth to face. The quality of care in nursing homes can vary widely, and it's not always as good as you'd hope. Some places are understaffed with workers who are overworked and stretched too thin to give the kind of care you deserve. Others might promise a lot, like personalized attention or fun activities, but fall short when it comes to actually delivering. It's not that there aren't wonderful nursing homes out there, there are, but you have to do your homework to find them. If you're thinking about this move, it's so important to visit the home yourself, talk to the staff, and even ask other residents how they feel about the care they're getting. That extra effort can make all the difference in finding a place where you'll truly feel supported. Uh, Speaking of effort, there's another truth about nursing homes that can hit you hard, especially when it comes to your wallet. The high costs and financial pressure that often come with this choice. You might think a nursing home is a one-time expense, something you can plan for and manage easily, but the reality can be a lot more complicated. I've seen so many families caught off guard by how expensive nursing homes can be, and it's a lesson you don't want to learn the hard way. I once worked with a family in Oregon, a lovely couple named Helen and her son David, who were trying to find the right place for Helen's care. Helen had been living on her own for years, but after a few health scares, David thought a nursing home would be the best option for her. She was in her early 80s and she'd always been careful with her money, kind of saving up for her retirement so she wouldn't be a burden on her family. But when they started looking at nursing homes, they were shocked by the price tags. The average cost for a private room in a nursing home can be thousands of dollars a month, and that's not even counting extra fees for things like medication management, therapy, or special activities. For Helen, the monthly bill quickly added up to more than she'd expected, and it started eating into her savings faster than she or David could keep up. David told me they had to make tough choices, like selling some of Helen's belongings and cutting back on other expenses, just to afford the care she needed. It was stressful for both of them, and Helen felt guilty, like she was putting too much pressure on her son. I've heard this story from so many families over the years, and it's a hard truth. Nursing homes can be incredibly expensive, and the costs can put a huge strain on your finances. Even if you have savings or insurance, there are often hidden fees that catch you by surprise, like extra charges for laundry, transportation, or even basic things like toiletries. And if you're on a fixed income, those expenses can feel overwhelming, making it hard to relax and enjoy your time there. It's not just about the money, it's about the emotional toll it takes too, when you're constantly worried about how you'll pay the bills. If you're considering a nursing home, it's so important to look closely at the costs up front and plan carefully. Talk to the staff about what's included in the price, and don't be afraid to ask about any extra fees that might come up. It's also worth exploring other options like in-home care or assisted living, which might be more affordable and still give you the support you need. We're almost at the end of our journey to uncover the hard truths about nursing homes, and I'm so glad you've stayed with me to learn these important lessons. We've already talked about how losing your freedom, feeling lonely, dealing with uneven care, and facing high costs can make this choice tougher than you might expect. And now it's time to look at two more challenges that can be even harder to face. The first one is a truth that's tough to hear, but it's something you need to know. There's a real risk of abuse or neglect in some nursing homes. I know that sounds shocking, and it's not something anyone wants to think about when they're considering a place that's supposed to be safe and caring. But over the years, I've heard stories that have really opened my eyes to this reality, and it's something you need to be aware of to protect yourself or someone you love. I'll never forget meeting a woman named Dorothy at a senior advocacy event in New York a few years back. Dorothy had moved into a nursing home because she needed help with daily tasks after a hip surgery, and she thought it would be a place where she'd feel secure. She was in her late 80s, a kind soul who always had a smile for everyone, even on her toughest days. But when I talked to her, she shared something that broke my heart. She said some of the staff at her nursing home were rough with her. Sometimes they'd grab her arm too hard when helping her move, or they'd ignore her calls for help when she needed to use the bathroom. She even told me she'd seen other residents being yelled at for asking too many questions, and it made her feel scared to speak up. Dorothy said she felt powerless, like she didn't have a voice anymore, and it was a far cry from the caring environment she'd expected. I've heard stories like Dorothy's from others over the years, and it's a hard truth. Not all nursing homes are safe havens, and some staff, whether due to stress, lack of training, or just not caring enough, can mistreat or neglect the people they're supposed to care for. It's not something that happens everywhere, but it's a risk you need to be aware of. If you're considering a nursing home, it's so important to look for signs of how the staff treat residents. Watch how they interact, ask about their training, and check if there have been any complaints or reports of abuse. You deserve to feel safe and respected, and knowing this truth can help you find a place where you'll be treated with the care you need. That risk of mistreatment can often lead to another challenge that's just as serious: a decline in your mental health. Moving into a nursing home can take a big toll on your emotional well-being, and it's something I've seen so many seniors struggle with over the years. You might think a nursing home will give you peace of mind, a place where you can relax and feel supported, but the reality can be very different, especially if you're already dealing with loneliness or a lack of freedom. I once worked with a man named Edward, who I met at a community center in Colorado. Edward had moved into a nursing home after his wife passed away, hoping it would help him feel less alone. He was in his early 80s, quiet man who loved reading history books and listening to classical music. But after a few months, he told me he felt like a different person. He was sad all the time, and he'd lost interest in the things he used to love. He said the nursing home felt more like a hospital than a home, with its plain walls, strict routines, and lack of personal touches. He missed his old house, his garden, even the sound of his neighbor's dog barking in the morning. That sense of loss, combined with the isolation he felt, started to weigh heavily on his heart. And he told me he often felt like he was just waiting for the days to pass. I've seen this happen to so many others, and it's a hard truth. The environment in a nursing home can sometimes lead to feelings of depression, anxiety, or even a loss of purpose. You might feel like you've lost your sense of home, your routines, and the things that made you feel like you. It's not just about the physical space, it's about how it affects your spirit, especially if you're already feeling disconnected or out of place. If you're thinking about this move, it's so important to consider how it might affect your mental health and to look for a nursing home that feels warm and welcoming, with activities and spaces that make you feel at home. So, what can you do with all these lessons we've talked about to help you stay independent in a nursing home, or even decide if it's the right choice for you? I've shared these truths because I want you to be prepared, to know what to look for, and to avoid the mistakes that so many seniors face. It all comes down to being proactive and thoughtful about your decision. Start by doing your research. Visit different nursing homes, talk to the staff, and ask other residents how they feel about living there. Look for a place that respects your freedom, encourages social connections, offers good care, and fits your budget. And don't be afraid to ask hard questions about things like staff training, safety policies, and how they support your emotional well-being. If a nursing home doesn't feel right, it's okay to explore other options like in-home care or assisted living, which might give you more independence while still providing the support you need. I've seen so many folks find the right balance by taking their time and choosing carefully, and I know you can too. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all this. Have you or someone you know lived in a nursing home, and what was your experience like? Drop a comment below. I'm always here to listen and learn from you. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to Wise Wellness Path for more tips to help you live your best life as you age. Here's to staying independent, feeling connected, and finding the right path for you.